Ethan lived on a dusty planet far from Earth, but he still liked to think of himself as a simple guy. He fixed machines for the colony and sometimes helped out with dangerous jobs, but mostly he just tried to mind his own business, the sky above. His town was always a strange color, sometimes orange, sometimes deep purple. Ethan had gotten used to that, just like he got used to the odd shape of the local trees and the way the ground would rumble when the big cargo ships came and went a few months ago. Everything changed. There had been an attack, a real invasion, from the stars. The aliens who came were not friendly, and they had big machines and weapons that made everyone run for cover. Ethan did not think of himself as a hero, but when the power station caught fire, he ran in anyway. He helped save some workers who were trapped. He also did his best to fix the broken generators so that the colony did not lose air and water. After the invasion, many people thanked him and some called him brave, but Ethan just shrugged and said he did what he had to do. He did not expect any kind of reward. In fact, he would have been happy just to go back to his small workshop. But one afternoon, the colony officials called him to the main building. When he got there, he saw a group of people standing in a circle. The mayor, a tall woman with tired eyes, smiled at him. Next to her was a man from the security team and a few others he did not know. In the middle of the room was something covered by a thick cloth. "Ethan, you did something special for all of us," the mayor said. "We want to thank you in a way that shows how grateful we are." Ethan tried to smile. He did not like attention. "You really don't have to," he said. "I just did my job." But the mayor nodded at the security man who pulled the cloth away. Underneath was a person, but not a human. She was an alien woman much shorter than Ethan, with pale blue skin and big silver eyes. She wore strange clothes made of shiny, soft fabric, but around her ankles and wrists were metal bands connected by thin chains. "This is Lyra," the mayor said. "She was captured by our mercenaries when they drove the invaders away. She is valuable, a rare find. Some say she's the daughter of an important alien leader. We thought you might like to have her as a companion or helper." Ethan felt his face grow cold. He looked at the alien girl. She stared back, her eyes full of fear. She did not try to speak, but Ethan saw the way she held her arms tight against her body. The chains rattled when she moved. He wanted to say something, but the words would not come. He looked at the mayor and then at the others. They all seemed proud of what they were giving him. Maybe they thought they were doing him a favor. Maybe. They did not see the pain on the girl's face. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, because he did not know what else to do. He walked over to Lyra and tried to smile at her. She looked down. The mayor clapped him on the back and told him that he could take Lyra home. The security man gave him a small device that could lock or unlock the chains. Ethan led Lyra out of the building and down the street. People stared as they walked by. Some smiled and waved as if Ethan had won a big prize. Lyra kept her head down, walking slowly. When they reached Ethan's workshop, he opened the door and let her inside. He waited until the door was shut, then knelt down so he could look into Lyra's eyes. She would not meet his gaze. He spoke softly. "My name is Ethan," he said. "I don't want to hurt you." Lyra said nothing. Her hands shook. Ethan sighed. He did not know what to do next. He made her sit in a chair and brought her some water, showing her how to drink from a cup. She took it with both hands, still watching him carefully. Ethan noticed small bruises on her wrists where the metal bands had rubbed her skin raw. He did not sleep well that night. He kept thinking about Lyra, about how scared she looked, and about what kind of people would give someone a living, thinking person as a reward. In the morning he went to check on her. She was still sitting where he left her, eyes open and full of worry. Ethan tried to talk to her. He spoke slowly, using his hands to show what he meant. "You're safe here," he said, even though he was not sure if that was true. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Lyra watched him. When he tried to touch the chains, she pulled back, afraid. Ethan held up his hands to show he meant no harm. He sat on the floor across from her and talked about the town, about his job, about Earth. He did not know if she understood, but after a while she seemed to relax a little. Days passed. Ethan made sure Lyra had food and water. He found an old blanket for her to sleep on. She did not say much, but sometimes he heard her humming softly to herself. The sound was strange, but also beautiful. Ethan listened from the other room, thinking about what she must have lost. Ethan tried to learn more about Lyra. He searched the colony's computer for anything about her people. He found a few articles written by traders. Most of them said her kind was peaceful, not fighters, and liked to sing and paint. Some said they had special talents, like healing or calming others, but Ethan was not sure if that was true. He also tried to find out what language she spoke. He guessed it was not the same as the invaders who attacked the colony. Lyra watched him as he spoke different words, trying to see if she recognized any of them. One day, when Ethan pointed to himself and said, "Ethan," she nodded and tried to say his name. Her voice was soft and musical, and when she said, "Ethan," it made him smile. Ethan brought her simple things, fruit, soft bread, even a little flour from outside. He showed her how to eat it, and she smiled for the first time. It was only a small smile, but Ethan felt something change inside him. He spent more time with her. He taught her a few English words, and she tried to teach him words in her language. They laughed when he got them wrong. Lyra's laughter was light, almost like a song. Ethan realized he liked hearing it. Still, he could not stop thinking about the chains. Every time he saw them, he felt sick. He knew it was wrong. One night, after Lyra had gone to sleep, Ethan sat by the window and stared out at the stars. He wondered what kind of world Lyra came from. He wondered if she missed her home, her family. He thought about what would happen if he tried to let her go. The colony officials might be angry. The mercenaries might come after him. But Ethan knew one thing: he could not keep her like this. It was not right. The next morning, Ethan made a promise to himself. He would find a way to free Lyra, no matter what it cost him. He did not know how he would do it or what would happen after, but he knew it was the only choice he could live with. He went to Lyra and sat beside her. She looked at him, a little less afraid now. Ethan took a deep breath. He pointed to the chains and then to the small device. He said, "Soon I will take these off, I promise." Lyra watched him for a moment, then nodded slowly. For the first time, Ethan saw hope in her eyes. He smiled, feeling a new sense of strength growing inside him. He knew it would not be easy, but he also knew he was not alone anymore. Their journey had just begun. Ethan woke early the next morning. He heard a soft sound coming from the small room where Lyra slept. It was not a cry or a call for help, but a song. Lyra was singing in her own language, the words flowing quietly like water. Ethan did not understand the meaning, but he felt the sadness in her voice. He stood outside the door, listening. When she finished, there was only silence. He made breakfast and brought some food to her. Lyra sat on the edge of the blanket, eyes lowered. He handed her a piece of fruit and some bread, trying to show kindness. She took them with careful hands and nodded once. Ethan smiled and sat on the floor near her, not too close, not too far. He wanted her to know he was a friend. Ethan pointed to himself. "Ethan," he said. Then he pointed to her, raising his eyebrows in question. Lyra looked unsure at first, then touched her chest. "Lyra," she said, voice soft but clear. Ethan nodded, repeating, "Lyra." He said it slowly, trying to match her sound. Lyra smiled a little, and Ethan felt good inside. It was a start. Over the next few days, Ethan worked on learning Lyra's language. He pointed to objects in the room and said the English word. Lyra would listen, then try to say it, her accent gentle and strange. Then Lyra would say a word from her language, and Ethan would repeat it. Sometimes they laughed when he said the wrong word or made a funny face. Bit by bit, they understood each other more. Ethan wanted to know about Lyra's people, but he was careful not to make her sad. He asked simple questions. "Home?" he said one day, pointing to the sky. Lyra's face turned sad. She nodded, then drew a picture on the floor with her finger. She made circles and lines, showing a sun and 3 moons. She pointed to a star outside the window, then back to her drawing. Ethan guessed it was her home planet. He wondered how far it was, and if she would ever see it again. Ethan tried to make life better for Lyra. He took the chains off her ankles. When they were alone, always locking them again before others could see. He hated putting them back on, but he knew the colony people would notice if she was not chained. Every time he did it, Lyra's eyes filled with fear. Ethan promised her. Each time, soon, free. Lyra started to trust him. She would talk a little more each day, using words and gestures. She told him about her family, a mother, a sister, and a brother. She tried to draw their faces for him, her finger moving slowly on the dusty floor. Ethan listened to her stories. Wishing he could do more, Ethan also talked about his life. He told her about Earth, about rain and green trees, about old movies and funny music. Lyra listened with wide eyes, trying to picture the things he described. Ethan liked to make her laugh. He would tell silly stories about the people in town, and do small tricks with tools from his workshop. Lyra laughed, covering her mouth with her hands. Her laugh was light and bright. One afternoon, Ethan's friend Megan came to visit. Megan was sharp and quick, with brown hair and strong arms. She liked to help Ethan with broken machines, but today she stopped in the doorway when she saw Lyra. Megan frowned. "So it's true," she said. "They gave you an alien girl." Ethan looked at Megan, feeling awkward. He knew what she was thinking. Most people in the colony thought of the aliens as enemies or animals, not as people. "It's not what you think," Ethan said quietly. "She's not a prize, she's just lost." Megan walked over and looked at Lyra. Lyra stared back, not saying a word. Megan looked at the chains, then at Ethan. "What are you going to do?" Ethan lowered his voice. "I'm going to help her. I can't keep her like this." Megan looked worried. "Ethan, the mayor and the mercenaries, if they find out, you'll be in trouble." "I know," Ethan said, "but it's not right." "She deserves to be free." Megan was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "If you need help, you tell?" "Me, I don't like this either." Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He was glad to have a friend on his side. He watched as Megan gave Lyra a small, careful smile. Lyra nodded, her eyes softening a little. The days passed, and Ethan grew more worried. People in the colony started to talk. They wondered why Ethan spent so much time in his workshop. Some asked if the alien girl was causing trouble. A few came to see for themselves, peeking through the window or knocking on the door. Ethan tried to act normal. He kept working on machines, fixing broken pumps and lights, but his mind was always on Lyra. He waited for a chance to set her free, but he knew it would not be easy. The colony was small, and everyone knew everyone else's business. One evening, Ethan found Lyra sitting by the window, looking out at the sunset. The sky was red and gold, turning the world soft and warm. Lyra's chains glowed in the light. Ethan sat beside her. "Do you want to go home?" he asked softly. Lyra nodded. She pointed to the sky and then to herself. Then she pointed to Ethan, her eyes full of hope and fear. Ethan did not know what she meant at first. Then he understood. She was asking if he would come with her. He smiled. Gently, "Maybe," he said, "if we can." Lyra smiled back, and for the first time, Ethan saw real hope in her eyes. Ethan started to make a plan. He talked to Megan late at night when no one could hear. Megan agreed to help, but she warned Ethan to be careful. They knew the colony guards watched the spaceport closely. It would be dangerous to try to escape. Ethan made a map of the colony. He marked the safest paths, the places where guards rarely walked, and the times when people were busiest. He decided the best chance was during the next festival, when everyone would be distracted. Megan promised to help make a distraction to draw the guards away from the gates. Ethan also started to save small supplies, food, water, a little money. He made a small bag for Lyra with a warm scarf, a brush, and a few other things she might need. Lyra did not understand at first, but when Ethan showed her the bag and pointed to the door, she nodded. She understood escape. One night, Ethan found Lyra sitting quietly, looking at her hands. He sat down and opened the chains on her ankles. Lyra watched him with wide eyes. He said softly, "You are not a slave here." "Not to me." Lyra reached out and touched his hand just for a moment. It was the first time she had touched him without fear. The next day, Megan brought news. The mayor and the mercenaries were talking about Lyra. They wanted to show her off at the festival to prove how strong the colony was. Ethan felt sick. If they put Lyra on display, it would be even harder to help her escape. Ethan told Lyra what was happening using simple words and signs. Lyra's hands shook, but she nodded. She trusted Ethan. The days before the festival passed quickly. Ethan and Megan practiced their plan again and again. Megan would start a small fire near the market, just enough to make the guards run. Ethan and Lyra would slip out the back of the workshop, through the old alleyways, and to the spaceport. If they were lucky, they could catch a small cargo ship leaving for another planet on the night before the festival. Ethan sat with Lyra. He looked at her and felt something strange, a deep sadness, but also hope. He realized he cared for her, not just as someone to protect, but as someone important to him. He tried to tell her. "Lyra," he said softly, "I want you to be free. I want you to be happy. You're not alone anymore." Lyra touched his hand and squeezed gently. She said his name, her voice trembling. They sat together in the dark, waiting for their chance. The stars outside seemed closer than ever, and for the first time, Ethan let himself hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find a new life together. As the festival began the next day, the colony was full of music and noise. Lights filled the square, and people danced and laughed. But in a quiet workshop, Ethan, Lyra, and Megan waited for their moment. Their hearts beat fast. The time for escape had come. The festival began early in the morning, filling the streets with bright colors, loud music, and the smells of food cooking on open fires. People wore special clothes and painted their faces with cheerful marks. Children ran through the crowds, laughing and chasing each other. Most of the adults gathered in the main square, where a band played a song that everyone knew. Ethan tried to act like it was just another day. He checked his tools, fixed a small water pump, and even smiled at the people who walked by his workshop. But his mind was busy. He thought about the plan over and over, worrying about what could go wrong. Lyra sat quietly in the small room at the back, waiting for Ethan's signal. Her hands shook a little, but she tried to stay calm. She trusted Ethan, and she remembered his promise that he would help her find freedom. Megan came by with news. She wore a bright red scarf to show Ethan that everything was ready. She whispered, "Fire starts in 15 minutes. Be ready," Ethan nodded. He glanced at the clock on the wall, his heart beating faster. Ethan went to Lyra and knelt beside her. He unlocked her chains and put them gently in a bag. "We go soon," he said softly. Lyra nodded. She picked up the small bag Ethan had prepared for her, and she wrapped the scarf around her shoulders. Ethan opened the door a little and looked outside. The street was crowded and no one noticed them. The signal came, a loud bell ringing from the market, then shouts and running feet. Megan had started the fire just as planned. People screamed and ran toward the smoke. The guards near the spaceport left their posts, shouting orders and trying to organize a line of buckets to put out the flames. "Now," Ethan said. He took Lyra's hand, and together they slipped out the back door, moving quickly but trying not to run. They stayed close to the walls, moving through shadows, dodging behind trash bins and empty crates. Lyra's eyes were wide, but she did not make a sound. Ethan led her through the maze of back alleys. Just as he had planned, they reached the edge of the market where a few people still stood watching the fire. Ethan paused, waiting for the right moment. A group of guards ran past, yelling for more help. Ethan and Lara slipped into the crowd, pretending to be just another pair of festival goers. No one paid attention to them. The smell of smoke and burned wood filled the air, and everyone was too busy looking for the fire to notice anything else. Ethan saw Megan across the street. She was waving her arms, telling the guards about more smoke in the next alley. She caught Ethan's eye and gave a small, quick nod. The way was clear. Ethan led Lyra around a corner, through an open gate, and into the loading area behind the spaceport. The spaceport was busy with ships and cargo workers. A few people noticed Ethan and Lyra, but no one stopped them. They walked quickly toward a small ship at the far end of the yard. It was a cargo ship, old and rusty, with a tired-looking pilot standing by the ramp. Ethan hoped the pilot would not ask questions. He stepped up to the pilot. "We need a ride," he said quietly, showing the pilot some of the money he had saved. "Just to the next planet, that's all." The pilot looked at Ethan, then at Lyra. He frowned, but the money changed his mind. "Quickly," he said. "I leave in 5 minutes." "If you're not on board, I go without you," Ethan nodded. He and Lyra walked up the ramp and into the ship. The inside was small and dark, filled with boxes and crates. Lyra sat on a crate, holding her bag close. Ethan sat next to her, listening to the sounds of the engine starting. For a moment, he let himself hope. Maybe they had made it. Suddenly, there was a loud voice outside. It was one of the mercenaries yelling for the pilot to stop. Ethan's heart jumped. He looked out the small window and saw a group of guards and mercenaries running toward the ship. The pilot shouted something and started to close the ramp, but the mercenaries were too fast. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand. "Run!" he said, pulling her deeper into the ship. They pushed past boxes, searching for another way out. The ship shook as the engines roared, trying to lift off before the mercenaries could break in. Ethan found a small service hatch at the back. He pulled it open and pushed Lyra inside. The space was tight and dark, but it was hidden from the main cargo bay. They crawled through the narrow passage, hearing the voices of the mercenaries searching for them. Ethan could feel Lyra shaking, but she did not cry. They reached the end of the passage, where a small ladder led up to the maintenance deck. Ethan helped Lyra climb up, then followed her, closing the hatch behind them. On the maintenance deck, it was quiet. They could hear the engines and the pilot shouting with the mercenaries. Ethan listened carefully, trying to guess what was happening. After a few minutes, he heard the ramp finally close and the engines roar louder. The ship shook as it lifted off the ground. Ethan and Lyra waited, hardly breathing, until the shaking stopped. Then they heard the pilot's voice on the intercom. "We are in space. Everyone stay where you are." Ethan let out a deep breath. He smiled at Lyra. "We did it," he whispered. Lyra smiled back, a look of relief on her face. They stayed, hidden for a long time, afraid to move. Eventually the ship became quiet. Ethan checked through a small vent and saw that the mercenaries had left. The pilot was flying the ship alone now. Ethan and Lyra crawled back down to the cargo bay. The pilot was waiting for them. He shook his head but did not seem angry. "You're lucky," he said. "If they had caught you, they would have taken you both." Ethan nodded. He gave the pilot the rest of the money and thanked him. The pilot shrugged. "Stay out of trouble," he said. The journey through space was slow and quiet. Lyra sat by a small window, watching the stars go by. Ethan sat next to her, feeling tired but happy. He talked softly, telling Lyra stories about space and the old adventures people used to dream about. Lyra listened, her eyes full of wonder. They arrived at the next planet a day later. It was a green world with tall trees and wide lakes. The air smelled fresh and the sun was warm. Ethan and Lyra left the cargo ship and walked into the new town. No one knew them there. No one cared about chains or rewards. Ethan found a small place to stay. He and Lyra shared a room above a bakery where the owner asked no questions. They were safe, at least for now. For the first time, Lyra was free. She walked outside, feeling the sun on her face. She laughed and sang her own songs. Ethan watched her, feeling joy he could not explain. He helped her buy new clothes and showed her how to use the local money. Lyra learned quickly. She spoke more English each day, and soon she was able to talk with people in the market. Ethan tried to find news about the colony. He learned that the mercenaries were still looking for them, but no one knew where they had gone. He stayed careful, never giving his real name and always watching the shadows. But as the days passed, he felt more at ease. Lyra made friends with a few local children. She told them stories from her own world, and they listened with big eyes. She sang songs that made people smile, even if they could not understand the words. Ethan saw that Lyra was changing. She was not just a scared girl in chains anymore. She was strong, kind, and full of hope. One evening, as the sun set over the lake, Ethan and Lyra sat together on a small hill. Lyra looked at Ethan and said, "Thank you." Ethan smiled. "You're welcome," he said. "You don't have to thank me." Lyra shook her head. "You gave me freedom. You gave me hope." Ethan felt his heart beat faster. He realized he cared for Lyra more than he had ever cared for anyone. He reached for her hand and she held it tightly. They sat in silence, watching the stars appear. For the first time, Ethan felt like he belonged somewhere, not because of the place, but because of the person beside him. But even as they found peace, Ethan knew their journey was not over. They were safe for now, but there were still dangers ahead. The mercenaries would not give up easily, and Lyra still dreamed of going home. Ethan promised himself that he would do whatever it took to protect her. Together they would face whatever came next. Ethan and Lyra started to feel safe in their new home. The small town near the lake was peaceful and people were friendly. Ethan worked at the bakery, fixing machines and helping with heavy jobs. The owner, Mr. Allen, liked him because he was quiet and honest. Lyra helped in the shop, sweeping the floor and arranging bread. She learned to smile at the customers, and soon everyone liked her gentle way. Every morning, Ethan and Lyra ate breakfast together in their little room. They talked about small things like the weather or what they would do that day. Lyra practiced her English, and Ethan learned a few words from her language. They laughed a lot, and sometimes Ethan forgot all about the troubles they had left behind. But at night, he always checked the locks and looked out the window, just to be sure no one was coming for them. Lyra enjoyed the new world. She liked walking by the lake and listening to the birds. She made friends with Mia, the baker's daughter, who taught her how to bake sweet rolls. Lyra told Mia stories about her own world, using simple words and funny pictures drawn in flour on the table. Mia loved listening and promised to keep Lyra's secrets, but sometimes Lyra still felt sad. She missed her family and her old life. Some nights she sat by the window and sang soft songs in her own language. Ethan listened from his bed, feeling both happy and sad at the same time. He wanted to help her but did not know how. One evening, Ethan heard a group of strangers talking outside the bakery. He listened carefully and caught a few words that made his heart race. They were asking questions about a young man and a strange girl. Ethan told Lyra about the men. She looked scared, but Ethan tried to calm her. "We will be careful," he promised. "We have friends here." The next day, Ethan spoke to Mr. Allen in private. He explained that he and Lyra needed to leave town for a while. Mr. Allen nodded, understanding without asking too many questions. He gave Ethan some food and wished them luck. Ethan and Lyra packed their things that night. Mia hugged Lyra tightly and gave her a little bag of sweet rolls for the road. They left before sunrise, walking along the edge of the lake until the town disappeared behind them. They traveled for many days, moving from town to town, always looking over their shoulders. Sometimes they slept in small inns, other times under the stars. Lyra was brave, but Ethan saw the worry in her eyes. He tried to make her laugh by telling silly stories or showing her strange things he found along the way. Lyra liked the wildflowers and made small crowns from them to wear in her hair. As they walked, Lyra taught Ethan more words from her world. She drew pictures in the dirt and told stories about her people's ways. Ethan listened carefully, trying to remember everything. He realized that Lyra's people were peaceful, full of songs and art, not fighters or conquerors. The stories made him sad for what she had lost. One afternoon, as they walked through a forest, they heard the sound of engines in the distance. Ethan pulled Lyra behind a tree and watched as a group of mercenaries drove past in a large vehicle. He recognized one of them from the colony where he used to live. They waited until the noise faded before moving again. That night they camped in a quiet spot near a river. Ethan built a small fire and cooked some bread over the flames. Lyra sat close to him, looking tired but calm. They ate in silence for a while, then Lyra asked, "Why do you help me?" Ethan thought about it. He looked at Lyra and said, "Because you are my friend. You did nothing wrong. You deserve to be free." Lyra reached for his hand and squeezed it gently. "Thank you, Ethan." After that night, they became even closer. They shared stories and dreams, and Ethan told Lyra about his family on Earth. He missed them, but he did not feel alone anymore. Lyra was his family now. As they traveled, Ethan asked people about ships going to other worlds. Most people said it was too dangerous, but one old trader told him about a small spaceport hidden deep in the mountains. If they could reach it, they might find a ship willing to take them far away. Ethan and Lyra followed the river north for many days. The path was rough, and sometimes they had to hide from patrols. Lyra got sick once with a fever that made Ethan very worried. He found a small village and begged for help. A kind woman gave them medicine and let them rest in her barn. Lyra got better, but Ethan knew they could not stay long. One evening, as they reached the edge of the mountains, they saw bright lights in the sky. It was a spaceport, just like the trader had said. Ethan felt hope again. Maybe this was their chance? They waited until night to approach. The spaceport was small, with only a few ships parked on the landing pads. Ethan asked around quietly, offering money to any pilot who would listen. Most said no, but one young woman named Carla agreed to help. She was flying a transport ship to the edge of the galaxy and needed extra hands. Carla looked at Lyra with curiosity but did not ask questions. She told them to come back at sunrise and be ready to leave quickly. That night, Ethan and Lyra found a place to sleep in an empty storage shed. Lyra curled up beside Ethan, holding his hand tightly. "Are you afraid?" she whispered, a little. Ethan admitted, "But I trust you, and I trust Carla." Lyra smiled and closed her eyes. For the first time in a long while, she slept peacefully. At dawn, they met Carla by her ship. Carla checked to see if anyone was watching and then helped them aboard. The ship was old but strong, filled with cargo and strange machines. Carla showed them a small room where they could hide during the journey. As the ship lifted off, Ethan watched the world below grow smaller. Lyra sat beside him, her eyes full of wonder and hope. Ethan put his arm around her shoulders, and for a moment all the fear and worry faded away. The trip through space was long. Carla kept the ship running smoothly, teaching Ethan how to help with simple repairs. Lyra spent her days watching the stars and drawing pictures of her dreams. At night, she sang soft songs that made even Carla smile. Ethan and Lyra talked about their future. Lyra told Ethan she wanted to see her home again, to find her family if they were still alive. Ethan promised to help her, no matter what. He said, "We will find your home together." One day, Carla brought news. She had heard a message on the radio. The mercenaries were still searching for Ethan and Lyra. There was a reward for anyone who found them. Carla looked at Ethan and said, "You can trust me. I will not tell anyone, but you must be careful." Ethan thanked Carla and promised to help her however he could. He felt lucky to have found a real friend. The journey brought Ethan and Lyra even closer. They talked for hours, sharing secrets and dreams. Sometimes they sat in silence, just enjoying each other's company. Ethan realized he did not want to be anywhere else. Lyra felt the same. As the ship neared the edge of the galaxy, Carla pointed out a blue planet on the screen. "That is near your people's world," she told Lyra. "It is not the same, but it is close." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She hugged Carla and Ethan, saying thank you over and over. The ship landed on a small outpost where few people lived. Carla helped Ethan and Lyra gather their things and wished them luck. Ethan and Lyra stepped out onto the new world. The air was fresh and the sky was a bright, deep blue. Lyra looked at Ethan and smiled through her tears. "Home," she whispered. Ethan smiled back. He did not know what the future would bring, but he knew he and Lyra would face it together. They walked hand in hand toward the unknown, ready for the next part of their journey. Ivo, the outpost manager, greeted Ethan and Lyra when they arrived. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He listened to their story and nodded slowly. "I know a pilot who can get you close to her homeworld," he said. "It will cost some credits and it will not be easy." Ethan nodded. He had saved as much money as he could. Lyra's eyes shone with hope. The next day they met the pilot, a woman named Sira. She had a small ship that could travel long distances. Sira looked at Lyra and said, "I have heard of your people. They live in the star cluster beyond that blue planet. It will take 2 days of careful flying, and we will have to avoid patrol routes." Ethan asked about danger. Syrah shook her head. There are old patrols looking for escaped slaves. We must be careful. Lyra held Ethan's hand. Ethan squeezed hers. He promised her they would be careful. They climbed aboard Syrah's ship. The interior was cramped, with small beds and a cooking area. Lyra sat by a window, her face pressed against the glass as the ship lifted. Ethan showed Syrah how to read his map, pointing to the stars they would follow. Syrah smiled. You are a good navigator, Ethan felt proud. The first day was quiet. Lyra told Ethan more about her family. She spoke slowly in English, but sometimes she spoke in her own language and drew pictures in the small notebook she carried. She liked to draw stars and circles and the shapes of the plants on her home world. Ethan watched her and felt a warmth in his heart. On the second day, they entered a region where the stars shone bright and close. Syrah switched off the ship's lights. Ethan and Lyra sat in silence. Suddenly alarms rang. Syrah looked at the screen. Patrol ships, she said. They are scanning this corridor. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. He remembered Megan's warning. Lyra clutched his arm. Syrah spun the ship and dove into the dark, hiding in a belt of asteroids. The viewports showed gray rocks floating silently. Syrah guided the ship between them. The hull trembling when they passed close, they waited until the patrols passed. Then Syrah breathed a sigh of relief. That was close, she said. Good hiding, Ethan. Ethan nodded, feeling proud but shaken. Later they traveled through calm space. Lyra sat beside Ethan and rested her head on his shoulder. Ethan wrapped his arm around her. He could feel her warmth. He realized he was in love with her. He thought she might feel the same. On the third day they saw the distant blue-green planet. It was beautiful, with swirling clouds and green continents. Lyra gasped. My home, she whispered. Tears filled her eyes. She reached for Ethan's hand. Syrah landed on a small moon orbiting the planet. It had a research station with a quiet landing pad. Ivo had told them about it. The crew there did not ask many questions. They would send a small shuttle to the planet's surface. When the shuttle arrived, Ethan and Lyra climbed in. The ride down was smooth. Lyra looked at the green world below, her eyes shining with hope and fear. Ethan held her hand. The shuttle landed near a small village. Lyra recognized some shapes in the fields, the tall spirals of her home plants and the soft blue grass. She sighed and looked at Ethan. This is where I was born, she said. They stepped off the shuttle. Lyra ran forward and knelt on the ground. She touched the grass, her tears wetting the blades. Ethan stood behind her, watching her find her home again. Villagers came to see them. They spoke a strange language, and they looked at Lyra with surprise. Lyra stood and tried English. I am Lyra, she said. This is Ethan. He helped me to return. The villagers looked at each other and then smiled. They spoke kindly, and Lyra answered using simple words and gestures. One of the villagers, an old woman with silver hair, hugged Lyra. Lyra held her tight, crying. Ethan watched, his heart full of joy and sadness. He knew this was the end of his journey with Lyra, or so. He thought. The villagers took Lyra to her family home. Ethan followed. The house was simple but warm. Lyra's mother was there, with her sister and brother. They cried tears of joy when they saw Lyra free and safe. They hugged Ethan, thanking him. Lyra's father arrived later. He was tall and strong. He bowed to Ethan, saying things Ethan did not understand, but the meaning was clear. Thank you. That night, there was a small celebration. The villagers made food and drinks, and they sang songs. Ethan tried the food, and it was sweet and spicy. Lyra introduced Ethan to her people. She translated with simple words. Ethan saved me. Ethan is my friend. Everyone smiled at Ethan. He felt welcomed, but also strange. He was a stranger in this world, and he longed to be with Lyra, not to leave. After the feast, Ethan and Lyra walked under the stars. The sky looked different here, with more lights and shapes. Lyra pointed to the constellations and told Ethan their stories. He listened, feeling close to her in a way he never had before. Then, Lyra stopped and looked at Ethan. You should stay, she said in English. You can live here with me. You don't have to go back. Her eyes were hopeful and gentle. Ethan's heart clenched. He thought about his home, about the workshop where he fixed machines, about his friends on the colony. He thought about Megan, who had helped him, and Carla, who had risked her life. But he also thought about Lara, about the way she smiled, about the warmth in her eyes. He took a deep breath. "I will stay," he said softly. "I choose to stay with you." Lyra's face lit up. She hugged Ethan, and he held her tight the next morning. Ethan woke in a small room in Lyra's family home. He looked out the window at the green fields. He felt a new life starting. Lyra came to him with a cup of tea. She smiled and said, "Good morning." Ethan smiled back. They spent the day together. Lyra showed Ethan the village and the way her people lived. They harvested fruits and wove baskets. Ethan helped, learning new skills. He felt happy. That evening, Lyra's father asked Ethan to sit with him. They did not speak the same language, but they talked with simple words and kind gestures. Ethan bowed to him, and the older man touched Ethan's shoulder. It was a sign of respect. Ethan knew he had found a new family, a new home. He thought about the colonies and the mercenaries and the danger. It felt far away now, like a bad dream. As the sun set, Ethan and Lyra walked to a hill overlooking the village. They held hands, watching the sky turn orange and pink. Lyra rested her head on Ethan's shoulder. Ethan felt peace. He had freed Lyra, but he had also freed himself from fear. He had chosen love and found a home he never expected. Their journey was not over, for new challenges would come, but for now, they were together in a place of hope and new beginnings. Ethan woke before dawn, the pale light of the two moons filtering through the window. His mind was heavy with the choice he had to make. He stepped outside onto the soft blue grass and breathed the cool morning air. Lyra stood nearby, looking out at the horizon. She turned when she heard Ethan's footsteps and gave him a small, hopeful smile. Ethan joined her. "They sent word last night," he said softly. "The authorities say they will forgive me if I return with you. They want to use you as proof of their victory, but they promise not to hurt you." He paused, watching the sunlight touch the fields. "They will let me go home if I hand you back." Lyra's eyes widened, fear and disappointment flickering across her face. Ethan reached for her hand and held it tight. Lyra shook her head slowly. "I cannot go back," she said in English. Her voice was firm even though it trembled. "I am free. Now, with you." Ethan nodded, his heart aching to see her pain. He squeezed her hand. "I will not give you up," he promised. They walked back to the village center where the messenger waited. A tall man in a clean uniform stood by the landing. Pad, looking stern, he bowed to Ethan. "You have your answer. You may have your ship ready, but you must decide now." Ethan looked at Lyra. She met his gaze and nodded. He turned to the messenger. "We refuse your offer," he said. "We choose our own path." The messenger pressed a small data chip into Ethan's hand and turned away. Ethan and Lyra hurried to a small house by the edge of the village. Inside, the family had set aside an old vessel they had repaired for emergencies. It was weathered and small, but it could make the long trip to a secure port. Syrah's people had shown them how to start and maintain the engines. Ethan and Lyra brought fresh supplies, food, water, and warm clothing. Lyra packed a small bag with drawings of her home and a few keepsakes from her family. When the ship was ready, they climbed inside. Ethan sealed the hatch and powered up the controls. The engine hummed softly. He looked at Lyra, whose silver eyes shone with both fear and excitement. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lyra nodded and took his hand. The ship lifted off slowly, drifting above the village one last time. Ethan looked out the small window, seeing Lyra's family waving. Tears filled his eyes. He waved back. Then he turned and started the thrusters. The ship rose into the sky, leaving the village behind. The journey through space was tense. Ethan guided the ship along hidden routes, avoiding patrols and scanners. Lyra sat beside him, studying the navigation charts. They worked in silence, each focused on the task. At night, when the stars looked like diamonds through the viewport, Lyra rested her head on Ethan's shoulder. They held hands, drawing strength from each other. On the third day, they approached a larger spaceport where traders gathered. It was a neutral zone, protected by treaties. They could safely land there and find transport to Lyra's home planet. Ethan set the course and the ship glided toward the landing pad. As they landed, a patrol ship scanned them. Ethan held his breath. The scanners passed with no alarm. A local officer approached. She looked at the ship's papers and then at Ethan. And Lyra. Ethan stood and smiled. "We request safe passage," he said. The officer checked a list, frowned, then nodded. "You are clear, welcome." She turned and walked away. Ethan exhaled, relief flooding him. Lyra hugged him tightly. "We did it," she whispered. Ethan kissed her forehead and said, "We are free together." They disembarked and walked across the landing pad. Traders and travelers bustled around them, but no one stared. Ethan and Lyra blended into the crowd. They found a small passenger shuttle bound for Lyra's home cluster. They paid the fare and boarded. The flight was long and quiet. Lyra leaned against Ethan. He wrapped his arm around her. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you for choosing me." Ethan gently brushed her hair and said, "I choose you every day." When the shuttle arrived at the station orbiting Lyra's home planet, Ethan and Lyra stepped onto the observation deck. The planet was magnificent spiral seas of green and gold, glowing softly beneath a gentle sky. Lyra's eyes filled with tears of joy. Ethan stood beside her, feeling a deep sense of peace. A small family of her people approached. Lyra ran forward and they embraced her. Ethan watched, his heart full. Then the family saw him and bowed. Lyra took Ethan's hand and said, "Meet my family." Ethan bowed politely and smiled. Lyra's mother spoke, using a few English words and many gestures. Ethan understood the meaning. "Welcome home." Lyra's father placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder and said words Ethan did not understand, but they felt like respect and gratitude. Ethan nodded, overwhelmed with emotion. He looked at Lyra, who smiled back with love and pride. Later, Lyra's family led them to a gentle hill overlooking the fields where Lyra had grown up. They stood together in silence, watching the sunset on the world that had once been Lyra's only home. The air was warm and the sky glowed with soft colors. Ethan took Lyra's hand. "We have come far," he said. "But I am not afraid of the journey ahead." Lyra looked at him, her eyes bright. "We will face it together," she said. They stood side by side, looking out at the land that had given Lyra life. Ethan knew he had found his own new home, not just in this world, but in Lyra's heart. As the last light faded, they held each other close, ready to begin the next chapter of their life together.